Hey friends, welcome back to another video. My name's Emma Fave, and today I am going to be painting a flower from the Flower Color Guide. I'm going to pick it at random and we're going to paint it. So let's jump right in and get started. Okay, so today I am going to be painting a flower from this book called Flower Color Guide. I will link it in the description. I have done a review on this book and some other art books previously, so you can always check those videos out. But I kind of wanted to play flower roulette with this book today and randomly pick a flower from here and then paint it. Just show you how I would approach painting a flower from a reference photo. So this book is awesome. It has tons and tons of flowers, different colors, different styles. It's pretty awesome. I do love this book. And at the back it has little mini pictures of them, so you can always take them out. But yeah, so that's what I thought I'd be doing today. So I'm gonna close my eyes. I know you can't see me, but I'm closing my eyes and I'm just gonna flip through this book and just land on a flower. Ooh, okay. And I'm going to pick one of them and I'm going to show you how I paint it. So I'm actually going to take a photo of the flower that I'm painting and I'll just put it at the top of the screen so you guys can see it. But I think I'm going to go with the peony because I love peonies. They are my favorite, but this is a different style that I've never really painted before and it has a pretty intricate center. So I'm going to attempt this. Now I'm going to try and do it more in a loose style because that is just what I like to do. I don't want to put too much pressure on myself, but I'm going to try my best to just kind of get the vibe of what this photo is showing and then trying to translate it onto my watercolor paper. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to wet my paints and prepare my colors. So this peony is a really nice light pink, so I'm going to do some of my pinks, definitely my yellow, and then my green colors, just going to make sure that they're all nice and wet so we can get started. Okay, so I think with this one, I'm actually going to start with the center. I rarely ever start with the center of my flowers first, but because it has such an intricate center of all these little bits from the stamen, I think that's the way I'm going to go with this. So I have my size 2 brush from Craftmo, my size 12 and my size 6 just handy, I'm not sure which ones I'm going to use yet. And then I have my Etcher Lab cold press watercolor paper, my paper towel and my water, and we're ready to go. Okay, so I'm going to take my size 2 to start and I'm going to grab some yellow. I have this cadmium yellow pale, I think it is. And there are 2 of the flowers that are open and I'm just going to start by kind of just doing an outline of this circular type center with these little lines, just to kind of get a feel for the center. Okay, so I just kind of do a little outline of what I'm doing first. Hopefully I'm making sense today. It is the morning while I'm filming this. And then I'm just going to continue to fill it in. Right at the center, there's a little bit of like a pink color, so I'm just going to leave a little bit of space for that. And remember, I'm doing something a bit more loose, so I'm not worried too much about extreme detail or anything. And these don't have to be perfect. Some of them kind of go other ways, opposite ways. But what I am going to do is I am going to grab a yellow ochre color, so a slightly darker yellow, just to get a bit of like a shadowy kind of yellow, and just place it down here just so it gives it a little bit of depth. Like that, just changes it up a little bit. I just brought my desk up so it would be closer. Okay, so we have that, and then I'm just going to grab a tiny little bit of pink. That's not pink. That's my pink. There it is. And I'm just going to do like this little center, just like that. Okay, so there's our first one. And you know what? I'm going to go with this one first. I'm going to start this whole flower. So we have this really light pink. So I'm just going to take this really light wash. Always start with a lighter wash because you can always make something darker, but not necessarily lighter. And the outside of the petals, like the tips, are a bit more on the white side. So I'm going to start with the lightest wash I can, and I'm just going to do these. Oops, that's even too dark. Take off some of that color. And then I'm just going to do these kind of like little fluffy petals going around. Just doing these rounded shapes. Like so. And then over on this side, it's going to be a bit more flat because of the perspective. So I'm just going to do some flatter C-curve shapes like that. Then I'm going to wash off my brush completely. And then I'm going to do some more, and I'm going to let the pink from that first layer of petals bleed into this clean layer of water. I'm just going to continue to do some fluffier petals. And I'm leaving little bits of white space. Okay, so I know it doesn't look like much yet, right? Now I'm going to go with a bit more pink, and I'm just going to drag some little lines coming towards the center. And then right around here where it's a bit flatter, I'm just going to kind of do a couple strokes, flatter strokes like that. Like so. Okay, and this is very, very loose, so I'm not too worried about it being detailed or realistic necessarily. I am going to grab a little bit more pink. I'm going to grab a little bit of Hooker's green just to make it a bit duller, and do a little bit of shadow closest to the center stamen area. And the reason why I use green is because it's contrasting color, and so it just makes it a little bit darker, gives it a nice shadow without it kind of losing its pinkiness. And I'm just placing in some of this darker pink like that. You can place some a little bit up here, maybe even some at the top of the petals. I'm just going to take some of that color off just for a little bit of shadow. Or maybe it's curved. I feel like that's a little bit too dark, but that's okay. Like so. Okay. And then I feel like we could use a little bit more shadow in the center here. So I'm going to grab my yellow ochre again and just kind of do a little bit more. And if you don't have yellow ochre, you can always add a tiny bit of yellow's contrasting color to it, so purple, and that will give you a darker yellow as well. I might even use a tad bit of burnt umber just for a bit more depth. Just a little bit more. Like so. Like that. And there's that one. So I'm just going to grab my size 6 now. And I am going to grab some green. I think I'm going to use my olive green. Maybe a little bit of sap green mixed into it. And I'm just going to do... Actually, no. I was going to do the stem. I'm not going to do the stem yet. I want to place the other flowers first because it looks like the stem goes behind the other flower. So let's do another one of these right here. I actually really like the softness of that, of how it turned out. Okay, so let's grab our yellow again. We're going to do another one, starting with the center down here. Okay. So I'm just going to kind of outline this center bit. It's actually shifted over a bit more. But it doesn't have to be exactly like the reference photo. Okay, just doing my outline of that center. Remember leaving a little bit of space for the center here. Just doing these little lines like that. I think a little bit bigger. I'm going to grab my yellow ochre. Bring it more towards the bottom. And then maybe actually a little bit in here. And then I'm going to grab that burnt umber right now. Just tap a little bit in there while it's still wet. Like that. And then I'm going to grab that little bit of pink for that center. Actually, it looks like you can see a little bit of the green in the center too. So I'm going to grab a little bit of like this lime green. So you can just mix a little bit of yellow with your green. Just tap a little bit of green in there. Like that. Okay. Then I'm going to grab my bigger size 12. Let's move this over here. And again, I'm just going to put a new place for my pink. Remember, make it really light. So I'm just taking some of that color off on my brush. We can even test it out a bit. Yep, that's nice and light. And I'm just going to do these kind of rounded petals. And if the center's not dry and it bleeds into it a little bit, that's okay. This is loose, so I'm just doing these rounded, fluffy kind of petals. And then down here it's going to be flatter, right? Let's make it a little bit darker. And then do another section. Remember washing off our brush completely. Another layer of petals up behind. Allow some of that pink to kind of bleed in there. Oops. And then we can go back in with our pink. This is actually a lot lighter than our first one. So I'm just going to tap some of the pink in here, bringing some lines in for a bit of movement. Flatter lines on this side. I know it's like so light you can barely see it, right? That's kind of what we want, and then we can outline with the dark bits. So we can just do like little, because it's still wet, it will bleed nicely. Like that. So you can kind of see the outline of it. And now I'm going to grab my shadow pink color. Tap it around here especially. Let's make it a little bit more. Oop, that's a lot. I'm going to take some off on my brush. That's too much. Tap around the base especially. You can even go back in here and just kind of tap. Anyway. And just start placing some of those shadows. And if it's still too dark, I always wipe off my brush on my paper towel if I still have too much pigment. I'm just kind of adding this like almost like an upside down L shape. So I'm like going across and then coming down just to act like the shape of those petals at the top, and then it kind of comes in like there's a crease there. We can do a little slightly smaller, shorter one so it looks like there's petals down here. I think this needs a bit more pink. And also when you're going back in with this darker color, always make sure I'm wiping my brush off a lot on my paper towel because I don't want that extra water to drop into this wet surface, because then it's going to repel the paint. Okay, and that happens sometimes, and that's okay. It happens to me. You can always just mop it up or just move the water around if you need to, but just try to keep your brush semi-dry so it doesn't do that. Okay, so see how the shadow here is a lot darker? That's because that's already dry. Once this is dry, I'll add a bit more shadow there. But I wonder if we should add just like a little bit, some sharper lines, because now that this is dry, we can add a little bit more shadow, but it won't bleed like the original parts that we just did here. It'll be sharper because this is dry, right? So if you want to add that little bit of just some little lines and stuff. For a little bit more, not detail, but just a sharper. I feel like I need a little bit more shadow around here. It's kind of whatever look you want to go for, right? And it's not looking exactly like the picture, but that's okay. It doesn't need to. This is starting to dry, so any color I add in here, it's going to be sharper. I feel like we could even go a little bit heavier with the yellow in there too. Just going to go back in, adding some of those lines like we did here, because it's already started to dry. Like that. I like those. I think they look pretty cool. Okay, I'm going to grab a bit more yellow. I want to intensify this just a bit more. Like there shouldn't be too much white space in there. It's pretty dense. Grab a bit more of my yellow ochre. A little bit more of that pink for the center. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Okay, so those are our two open flowers. And now we're gonna do a couple of the buds. So there's one that kind of comes up here. We're just changing. I actually might change it from 2 buds to 1, just because in the photo, as you can see, we have the flowers that are kind of more directly underneath each other, and I put this one more to the side, and I feel like just 1/3 one will look a little bit nicer there, so we're just going to stick with the 1/3. So I'm going to grab my size 12. Again, a really light wash of pink to start. And I'm just going to do this rounded kind of ball shape, and it doesn't have to be perfect at all. Nice and light. Light pink, like so. Okay, really light. And it's kind of jagged towards the top just a little bit. And then I'm going to grab a bit more of my pink, and I'm just going to tap it towards the top like that. And then just maybe like a little bit coming down like this. Taking some of that pigment off just so I can move it around like so. Okay, just like the slightest bit. Then I might add a little bit of that shadow color to the top, just like the tiniest bit. And then to the bottom too. And this just really helps you practice using like the smallest amount of paint and really light values, which is so much more important than you think. You don't always have to layer or load your brush with lots and lots of color and water, okay? And then around it's going to be green. Okay, so now that that's kind of done, we can do a little bit more detail on that in a minute. Let's mark out where the stems are going to be. So I'm going to grab my green mixture here. I just have a little bit of olive green and a little bit of sap green. And I'm going to place where the stems are. Okay, one thing that you need to remember when you are painting flowers or drawing flowers, the stem needs to be connected to the base of that center stamen, okay? It has to come from somewhere. And if you have it slightly off center, it's not going to look right. So when you're making your stem, I want you to think of it going right from the top of that stamen right to the bottom, and that's where you're going to hit it. And it's going to come out, okay? Because if it's slightly over, it's going to look really odd. So I'm just going to do a line here, kind of thick, like that. And then this one, actually, let's work on one at a time. And we'll do some of the leaves. So there's not too many leaves coming out from underneath. For when I see it, they're like kind of coming out this way. So I'm going to have one kind of coming out this way, and then it's like a rounded leaf shape almost. It's not too pointy. Grab a bit more color. Like that. And I'm going to grab some more color. It's pretty light. It's almost more of like a hooker's green. I'm just going to put a darker green in there. Like that. And again, we're making it loose so it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, like that. And we can have another leaf like coming off of a stem here. I'm going to make this one a little bit darker because it's underneath that leaf. So I'm going to grab my perylene green. Sorry, just realized you guys can't see that well. Okay, my darker perylene green. I'm just going to make this one overall just a bit darker. And we get a little bit of darkness to this one too. Like that. And I'll do more too in a minute. Let's get this one going. So right from the end of the stamen hits. Like that. Make it nice and dark kind of right under where that is. And then it doesn't look like there's many leaves on this one, but we're going to do some anyway. So I'm just going to have some kind of coming up. This can kind of go around this flower. Why not? I'm gonna grab my darker green. Drop that color in there. I'm gonna have some coming down here. Again, it's not just like the photo, but it's similar. And we're just kind of doing these like they're imperfect leaf shapes. Don't worry about it being perfect. They can be different colors, different shapes. Maybe a little cluster. All right, why not? Need more of my darker green. Just putting it in there to get a little bit of a bleed. Like that. I like that. Okay, and then our one up here. Okay, so I'm going to have the stem kind of coming down right from the base. Like so. It's going to go behind this one. That kind of looks a little odd. Whoops. Yeah, mop it up. It's fine. We can add some leaves there. Okay, have it come down a bit more straight. It's a very weird composition because I'm not used to doing this kind of thing. And if you ever really want to try and get as much of that up as you can, take some clean water, scrub gently, and try and lift it again. And you can always cover it up with leaves. Make it work. Like so. Okay, and then for this one, I am going to do the part that's kind of around it. So I'm going to come around and do this like half semicircle kind of shape. Then there's like a leaf kind of coming from the base here. There's one that kind of comes up over here, and then one around this side, and then another leaf. Okay, maybe we can have another little bit there. I'm going to grab a little bit more of my color, make it a little bit darker. Like so. Okay, and then with my size 2, I'm going to do a little bit of line detail on the bud. So I'm just going to grab that shadowy pink color, and I'm just going to make a little shadow kind of crease here. And then some shadow coming from the bottom, just little lines like that. A little bit of pink, a couple from the top. And if you have like a couple more, or if you have an even smaller brush, with a better point even, I'm going to use the size 4 round. It has a better point right now, because I left that one touching something. Okay, I'm going to do even finer little lines here with like the lightest amount of pigment. Like that. Like that. And then let's cover this up with some leaves. Okay. So we can have one kind of coming up here. Okay, see? Mostly covered up already. Can barely tell. A little bit of darkness. Maybe some smaller leaves. And again, they don't have to be perfect. Add just a little bit of texture kind of coming up the stem. Maybe another little one here. like so. And I think that's pretty good. If you want to add like a couple more like detailed lines just for fun on these the leaves, you can do that. Totally up to you how you want this to go. Right? But key is just have fun with it. Like that. And there you go. There are our peonies from our flower color guide book. Let me know in the comments below if you'd like to see me do more videos of playing flower color guide roulette. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really hope you liked it and I hope you learned something. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and follow me on all my other platforms for tons more content. I'll see you guys soon. Bye!